there were two copper idols, placed in the Kaaba, named Asaf and Naila. During Tawaf, the act of circling the Kaaba, the idol worshippers would touch these idols in the hope of gaining blessings. Hazrat Zayd bin Haritha Razi Allah anhu narrates that once, the Prophet ﷺ was performing Tawaf of the Kaaba, and I was with him. While doing Tawaf, I passed by these idols and touched them. The Prophet ﷺ immediately said, "Do not touch them." We continued doing Tawaf, but I was curious and thought I would try to touch the idols again to see what would happen and why the Prophet ﷺ had stopped me, so I touched them again. This time, the Prophet ﷺ firmly said, "Did I not tell you not to touch them?" I swear that the Prophet ﷺ never touched any idol, even before Allah granted him prophethood and began sending down revelation. Allah protected him from all sinful and forbidden things. The idol worshippers would also sacrifice animals in the name of these idols, then either distribute the meat or cook it and serve it. But the Prophet ﷺ never ate such meat. He once said, "I have never tasted anything that was sacrificed in the name of idols, even before Allah granted me prophethood." He was also asked, "Did you ever worship idols in your childhood?" The Prophet ﷺ replied, "No." Then he was asked, "Did you ever drink alcohol?" He answered, "No." Even though, at that time, I did not yet know about the Book of Allah or the details of faith. Besides the Prophet ﷺ, there were also some other people in those days who did not eat meat sacrificed in the name of idols or touch alcohol. In his childhood, the Prophet ﷺ used to herd sheep. He would take care of the sheep of the people of Makkah and was paid a small coin for this work. He said, "Allah has sent every prophet as a shepherd of sheep. I used to herd the sheep of the people of Makkah for a few coins." Along with herding the sheep of the people of Makkah, he also took care of the sheep of his family and relatives. The reason why prophets herded sheep is explained as follows. There is great wisdom from Allah in this. Sheep are gentle and weak animals, so a person who herds them naturally develops kindness, love, and humility. Every job and profession has certain qualities. For instance, a butcher usually develops a tough heart, a blacksmith is hardworking, and a gardener becomes gentle and sensitive. Similarly, a person who has herded sheep becomes gentle and kind over time. When such a person takes on the task of guiding and nurturing people, any harshness or aggression in their nature has already been softened. This gentleness is crucial for spreading the message of faith. In Arabia, there was a man named Badr bin Mashar Ghifari who used to sit at the Ukaz fair, boasting about his bravery and telling stories of his achievements. One day, he sat with his legs stretched out and his head held high, and said, "I am the most honorable among the Arabs. If anyone thinks they are more honorable, let them prove it with their sword." Hearing this arrogant claim, someone got angry, rushed at him, and struck his knee with a sword. Some say his knee was cut off, while others say it was just injured. This incident led to a fight between their tribes, and a battle broke out, which was called the First Battle of Fijar. At that time, the Prophet ﷺ was only 10 years old. Another battle of Fijar occurred because of a woman from the Banu Amir tribe. The Banu Amir fought with the Banu Kinana tribe after a young man from Banu Kinana had harassed the woman. The third battle of Fijar also happened between Banu Amir and Banu Kinana, this time over a debt dispute. The Prophet ﷺ did not participate in these first three battles. However, he did take part in the fourth battle of Fijar. The Arabs had 4 sacred months, Dhul-Qa'dah, Dhul-Hijjah, Muharram, and Rajab, during which fighting and bloodshed were forbidden. Since these battles happened during those sacred months, they were called the battles of Fijar, meaning sinful or unjust, because fighting during these months was a serious wrongdoing. The fourth battle, in which the Prophet ﷺ participated, was called the Battle of Fijar Barad. It started when a man named Barad from the Banu Kinana tribe killed a man named Urwa from the Hawazin tribe during a sacred month. Both tribes were at the Ukaz fair when the news of the killing reached Banu Kinana, who became anxious, fearing a sudden attack by Hawazin. To avoid a confrontation at the fair, they fled toward Makkah. The Hawazin only learned of the incident sometime later, and they pursued Banu Kinana. By that time, Banu Kinana had already taken refuge in the sacred area of the Haram, where fighting was forbidden. So the Hawazin held back, and no battle occurred that day. The next day, however, Banu Kinana came out ready to fight, and the Quraysh tribe joined them. The battle continued for 4 to 6 days. Although the Prophet ﷺ was present because his uncles brought him along, he did not participate in the actual fighting. Instead, he helped by passing arrows to his uncles. Interesting. Even after 6 days of fighting, the battle had no clear winner. Finally, both groups agreed to make peace, but only after much bloodshed. Right after this battle, the event known as Hilf al-Fudul occurred. This story begins when a man from the Zubayd tribe comes to Makkah with some valuable goods. A prominent leader of Makkah, As bin Wa'il, bought these goods, but refused to pay the agreed amount. As bin Wa'il was a respected and influential person in Makkah, so when the Zubaydi man asked him for his payment, bin Wa'il ignored him and refused to pay. The Zubaydi man tried seeking help from various tribes, explaining how As bin Wa'il had wronged him and asked them to help him get his money. However, because of As bin Wa'il's high status, none of them dared to stand up against him. Instead, they scolded the Zubaydi man and sent him away. Realizing that no one was willing to help him, the Zubaydi man climbed up a hill called Abu Qays early the next morning. The Quraysh were still at home when he cried out in a loud voice, reciting a few lines of poetry. The essence of his poem was a plea to the descendants of Fijar, a famous ancestor of the Quraysh, to help a wronged man who was far from his homeland and whose wealth had been taken from him. The cry of this Zubaydi man deeply moved Hazrat Zubair bin Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. Zubair immediately went to Abdullah bin Judan, another influential leader, and together they decided to help the Zubaydi man. Soon, members of the Banu Hashim, Banu Zuhra, and Banu Asad tribes joined them. They all gathered at the house of Abdullah bin Judan, where he hosted a meal for them. Then, in the name of Allah, they made a solemn pledge: "We will always support the oppressed and ensure that their rights are restored." This agreement was named Hilf al-Fudul. The Prophet ﷺ was also present with the Quraysh during this significant pledge.